I want to go back to something we were talking about. Every now and then a name pops up out of nowhere, and you really don't know what to do with it. But there's a guy named Sam Nunberg. He is a former Trump aide. And, Trump always said, I hire the best people. The reason I've been so successful in business is I hire the right and best and brightest people. Well, Paul Manafort, how's that working out? Carter Page, a little bit different, I'd say. Roger Stone. Who knows much about Roger Stone? I'll tell you what to do. Over the weekend, if you have a minute, go on Netflix and look up the documentary, Get Me Roger Stone. That's the name of the documentary. It recounts most of his political consulting life. And then you've got this guy, the most recent addition to this cast of characters, a guy named Sam Nunberg. And I'd heard a little bit about this Friday. I got a buddy of mine who still is fairly in tune with the Trump administration and said, hey, man, there's this guy that's a little bit off the rails named Sam Nunberg, and he's getting ready to probably cause a stink. I don't know why, but he'll probably be enticed very easily by the media for his 10 minutes of fame. And I think that is, kind of what this guy's aspiring for. But he made appearances yesterday morning. He was interviewed by the Washington Post. And obviously, when the hate Trump media gets their hands on a guy who they believe is going to give them some damaging information about the current American president, they'll put him on whether he's drunk or not.
They're all over him.
And whether he's on drugs or not, they don't really care. And we'll have that debate. But I want you to play a bit of an interview that he did last night on CNN with Aaron Burnett. And what was, in my opinion, Red, one of the most bizarre interviews I've ever heard. And it was so bizarre that Aaron Burnett kept looking off camera like, what do I do with this guy? I mean, where do I go from here? I have no idea what to do with this guy. And I would argue it backfired a little bit. I mean, they thought they had a guy that was going to roll on Trump and say all these crazy, and he did say some crazy things, but I don't think he said anything indicting of this president. But anyway, here's Aaron Burnett on CNN last night. You know what they're about. I mean, they've carved their niche. I mean, they're about anything negative about this president. We'll put it on the air come hell or high water. And here's the latest example being former Trump aide Sam Nunberg.
Why, though, fall on the sword for someone else? And I asked that very specifically. Okay, Susan McDougal, I don't know if you remember her, right? But she was involved, was involved in the Whitewater investigation, right? She did not comply with a grand jury subpoena.
Yeah.
She went to prison for 18 months.
Mueller's not going to send me to prison for this. This is ridiculous. Look at this. Carter Page. I never spoke to Carter Page in my life.
Well, then why wouldn't you be happy to provide your communications if there aren't any?
Because I'm not going to go over when I have 15 emails a day with Roger Stone
and Steve Bannon
and have to spend 80 hours.
Okay, but what I don't understand is,
know what?
You could go to prison for this, okay? And if the communications do not show collusion with the Russians,
right?
Why wouldn't you just go in and testify about them? What do they show that you're so embarrassed of?
They show nothing that I'm so embarrassed. You know what but I don't believe.
You said earlier that you talk about people that you hate. So
okay,
are there disparaging things? You're just embarrassed. You were talking smack about others, or what?
No, that's not the reason. What I don't like, and this is a separate issue, is that I always find, Aaron, that there are two separate rules for Republicans and Democrats. Mm-hmm. Why did they not ask Hillary Clinton and Hillary Clinton's folks to produce these emails?
Perhaps they will, but I mean, I know you've been bringing that point up today.
And I think it's ridiculous.
That would be a separate investigation.
And I think it's ridiculous.
That would, and fine, you can talk about that. But right now we're talking about the specific investigation about Donald J. Trump.
Once again, Donald Trump did not collude with the Vladimir Putin is too smart to collude with Donald Trump.
Do you currently have a lawyer?
Yeah. Patrick, I have a very good lawyer, Patrick Brackley.
Okay, what has Patrick told you? Is he happy about all these interviews?
No, he's not. About the interviews, no, and he didn't know about any of this until I did it. And what happened was that I had a 3 p.m. deadline, Aaron, and I was going
to respond to Mueller.
To respond, but they sent this to me on Friday. Who am I? Am I some crook? Once again, Trump fired me within 6 weeks of the campaign. By the way, after I saved him, when he criticized McCain. That was Roger and me. But in any event...
So did you respond? I just want to be clear here. 3 p.m. So did you hit the deadline before 3 p.m. and you told him no?
No. I started looking at it.
You had a deadline and you didn't
I started looking at this. Mm-hmm. I started going over my emails. And I was like, this is ridiculous. What do I have to hand over all my emails to a federal investigator.
That's just a sample. And it went on for about, 20 or 25 minutes nonstop. And I think in all honesty, and you know my opinion of CNN, they made complete and total fools of themselves yesterday. I mean, if you believe that it's ethical and of journalistic integrity to allow a guy like that on your show, and they're so, Rev, they're so ambitious. They're so ambitious of trying to find something on this president that they've lost all sense of rationale. I mean, it was one of the most bizarre. I mean, I'm sitting there laughing out loud. It's a little bit like, remember the Saturday Night Live skit when they had the president, the convention of the Liars Club, and all the liars would get together in a city, and all of a sudden one guy would get up and give a speech, and he said, I've been in this Liars Club for, about 7 or 8 years, and I think I'm probably the most popular person in this Liars Club. Yeah, that's right. I'm the most popular person in this Liars Club. In fact, I think that, I can't name names, but the majority of you people probably want me to be, I'm sure you want me to be president of this,
I do remember that.
It's almost like, where do we go from here? I mean, where does CNN go today?
Yeah, that's the ticket.
This is the most trusted name in news. Their words, not mine. They've told you for a long time that they are the most trusted name in news. They allowed a person who was at least somewhat intoxicated, who was fired from the campaign 16 months before the election, who basically says on CNN, MSNBC, he did an interview on MSNBC with Katie Tur, and she was as perplexed as Aaron Burnett was. But he basically said, when they asked the question, do you think Mueller has something on Trump? He could. Yeah, he could. Do you think Trump colluded with Russia? No, he didn't collude with Russia. Putin's too smart to collude with Donald Trump. Trump couldn't have kept his mouth shut. I mean, those were some of the answers he gave. CNN is sitting there treating this person as if they have credibility. And it was one of the most bizarre moments in the history of CNN that I have ever seen in my life.
Hey, entertaining.
And they are not embarrassed at all. There was a spokesperson that came on from the Trump campaign following this interview. It got to the point, and I've got a transcript. We couldn't find it in audio, but I've got a transcript. Toward the end of the interview, Aaron Burnett, here's her words, exact words. Sam, I have to ask you one thing. It's an awkward question to ask. You're sitting very close to me. We talked earlier about what people in the White House are saying about you, talking about whether you were drinking or on drugs. Talking to you, Sam, I have smelled alcohol on your breath. This is a host of a show in prime time on CNN. And she's asking the guy that they've invited to come on and give criticism of the president. Some people have accused you of drinking. I smell alcohol on your breath. Sam, are you drinking? Here's what he said. I've not had a drink in a good while. My answer is no. No, but besides my antidepressants, that's okay, isn't it? So this guy potentially, and I'm not spreading a rumor here, it's more than likely that this guy was intoxicated with alcohol while taking antidepressants. And CNN and MSNBC felt it appropriate to take a guy. It's a kind of a sad guy. I mean, it's fairly obvious his life's off the rails right now. And he doesn't really have his wits about him. And he's lost his bearings because all he kept saying was, Roger Stone's my buddy. Roger Stone's loyal to Trump. I'm not as loyal to Trump as Roger Stone.
And obviously he's not taking his lawyer's advice, too.
Sam, well, no, he said the lawyer wasn't crazy at all about what he's doing. Sam, do you believe Trump colluded with the Russians? No, I don't. I think this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. But he could have. Who knows? He could have. I mean, you've got news reporting agencies like, and I got to find the language because Lester Holt led the NBC News saying a startling revelation in the Trump-Russia. There's nothing startling about this. It's a guy who more than likely is intoxicated and taking antidepressants, and we're going to make him a legitimate news story. It's sad that CNN would exploit someone in this situation or condition. Somebody's got to make a call at CNN and say, hey, man, this guy's no business on television. I mean, this guy's life is off the rails. It's fairly obvious that he's got some serious issues kicking. We can't put this guy on television. What did they do, Reb? Front and center.
Put him on.
Because you believe that he's going to say something negative about the president, and he really didn't. Other than when asked over and over and over again by the Washington Post, NBC News, ABC News, MSNBC, and CNN, when asked redundantly, do you believe Trump colluded with Russia? No. But he could have. That's a startling revelation. And I'll tell you, yesterday the media made fools of themselves. The media should be totally and completely embarrassed by their performance yesterday. And I think Erin Burnett was uncomfortable toward the end because I think she was told by a producer, hey, we got this guy. And here's this guy. And here's what this guy's saying. And this guy went to the Washington Post and New York Times earlier today and said this. And I think Erin Burnett got about a third of the way through the interview and said, the hell are we doing here? I mean, what in the world are we doing here? What is this about? Because she's sitting there, Rev, and you can't see, because we're on the radio, him slinging papers around in his hand and saying some of the most nonsensical things in the world. And it was a startling revelation per NBC News as they led off the newscast. I want to go back to one thing I've said over and over and over and over again. Donald Trump is the best gutter fighter in the history of American politics. And the media chased him to the gutter, and he is beating their ever-loving brains out. The little bit of credibility that America's mainstream media have with the public is out of the window, other than the whatever percent that hate Trump's guts. If you hate Trump's guts, then you trust and treat with some level of credibility what the news media is saying today. But the universe that could take him or leave him, the universe that support him, the universe that just says, wow, man, I mean, what are we doing here? They have no credibility whatsoever with the American public. And listening to some of that yesterday was some of the most bizarre, and it's a little bit sad. I mean, it really is. It's a guy who apparently had a situation or a position within the Trump campaign. And, I mean, if you remember, he's the one that tweeted out some fairly outlandish things that forced the Trump team to fire him 16 months before the election. So here's the revelation. I mean, in a nutshell, let's give the Cliff Note version of what we had all over the media yesterday. Here's a guy who's probably drinking. Erin Burnett said he was drinking because she said, you smell like alcohol. He admitted he's taking antidepressants. Here's a guy that all of these media forces felt appropriate to interview and put on the air in a form of exploitation that should embarrass any member of what I'd call the credible journalistic media. No embarrassment whatsoever. Why? Because it's about Trump. It's about Donald J. Trump. And here's his story. Here's the compelling information he had. Could Trump have colluded with the Russians? Sure, he could have, but he didn't. But he could have. But that's my opinion. Could have, but I don't think he did. But he could have.
Breaking news.
But he wasn't there. He was fired 16 months before Trump got elected. Anyway, it's one of the weirdest and wildest and most bizarre stories. Now, the anti-Trump crowd are up in arms. Here's this guy getting ready to roll on Trump. This guy doesn't have the coherence to roll on anybody right now. Put him somewhere and let him get himself straightened out, and then let's revisit whatever it is he has to say. No way, CNN said, front and center. MSNBC, get him on the air. Washington Post, print that article. New York Times, print that article. Lester Holt said, I got to read this? Yes, Lester, you got to read that. Back in a minute. Thanks to QAT. Good morning, PD. Live 95.